Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 19. The Lord begs charity from Bali Maharaj, and today we'll begin at text number 21. That's 8:19:21. Today is Vaman Dwadashi. So we're remembering the pastime of Vamandev. He's Vaman, considered by Rupa Goswami in the Bhagavatamrita one of the most attractive and full features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with Krishna himself and Lord Nrsingadev. To meditate on the all-attractive feature of the Lord, he can come to us in such an attractive way that we can become dissuaded from our wrong-headed attachment to the reflection of reality. It's not so easy to do, because once you get used to it, even though it seems like a bad idea, it's hard to get rid of. But the attractive force of Krishna can distract us from Maya and give us a good reason for directing our attention towards devotional service. Just the sheer beauty of the Lord. When you see somebody who's utterly beautiful, and what to speak of being famous at the same time, and powerful. There are various features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead which are categorized by great thinkers to be the naturally attractive features in any entity, especially in a person. We see those who are strong, beautiful, wealthy, wise, detached. Then there's a natural attraction. And the person who has all of those features in an unlimited volume is Krishna. And Vamandev is one of those manifestations of the Lord that is especially beautiful. Vaman means he's little, but not in a way that makes one think, oh, that seems odd. It actually is more endearing because he's small. And there's a way that those, including Bali Maharaj's sister, who saw Vamandev approach Bali, they thought, oh, I just want to hug him. She had a maternal instinct toward him because he was just beautiful and cute. What to speak of effulgent. All those features made her want to just embrace him and maybe, hold him close like a little child. That's why she became a little annoyed with him later when he took away all of Bali's things, like the whole universe. And this morning I heard Prabhupada saying they weren't his things anyway. One of the reasons he's a Mahajan is because he understood he was only, as Prabhupada said, a shareholder. He said, we're all shareholders. And when Vaman came and said, he had a clandestine way of taking back his shares that belonged to him anyway. Bhuktanam bhoktānam yagyatapasam. They're meant for him. And Bali recognized that. That's why he became such a great soul. But it wasn't so hard because Vamana is so attractive. Described, he's a little brahmana, effulgent, and he had a little water pot. His brahmachari stick, and extremely beautiful, charming. And he came begging charity from Bali, who, by circumstances, although he's a great devotee, he was born into a demoniac family. One of the great revelations of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which turns many of the ordinary conceptions on its head. For instance, there are groups of people called seminal gurus. They come in a line of gurus that are professionals. What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a guru. And they get paid for it, and then they retire at a certain point. And this pastime points out the seminal guru, even by name, Shukracharya means the seminal guru, who was attached to the wealth of Bali Maharaj because he was a sycophant. He thought, if Vishnu takes away all of his money, then how am I going to get paid? Where's my dakshina? What's in it for me? He was thinking. And the Bhagavatam emphasizes in 11th canto, for instance, that one must find Guru and then adhere to the Guru's instructions and to the example of the Guru. But here we find that Bali Maharaj becomes a Mahajan because he rejected his Guru on principle, because Shukracharya told him, by the way, he's going to cheat you because he's not really just a little brahmana. He's actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Bali had natural devotion in his heart, even though he was born in a demoniac family. After all, he comes in the lineage of Prahlad Maharaj, who also reasoned that, who am I to say anything, because Ramadaya Suraguna Munayota Siddha Satvai Katana Gatayo Vachasam Bravahe Naradi Tum Buruganada Ninapi Pipru Kim Toshnamarhati Samehare Ugrajate Manye Dana Bijana Rupa Tapasutau Jas Teja Pravava Palapaura Shabudha Yoga Narada Naihi Bhavanti Parasya Pungso Bhaktya Tutosha Bhagavan Gajayuta Paya Viprad Vishad Guna Yatara Ravinda Naba Padara Vinda Vimukashvapatamba Rishnam Manye Tadarpita Mano Vachanehi Tarta Pranam Punati Satkulamna Tapuri Manam Naivatmana Prapurayam Nijalabha Purno Nai Manam Jananda Vidusa Karuno Vranite Yad Yachano Bhagavate Viditi Tamanam Tachchat Mane Pratimukasya Yatabukashri Tasmad Aham Vikata Viklaka Ishvarasya Sarvatmana Mahigranami Yata Manisham Nicho Jayaguna Visargam Anupravishta Puyeta Yena Hipuman Anuvarnitena. That was his thought process, which was, I'm born in a demoniac family, and here are all these demigods offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of God. And who am I in comparison to them? But it seems that the Lord wasn't satisfied, he thought, by all their prayers. So they pushed me forward. And then he considered that the Lord's not concerned with the externals. Manye dana bijana rupa tapasu chajas. He names all the different attractive features an ordinary living entity might have by accumulation through pious activities. And they may be beautiful, they may be smart, they may be wealthy, but he said, it doesn't necessarily please the Lord. But then he said, Bhaktyatu tosha bhagavan gajayutapaya. But he noticed that Gajendra, again, Shastra says, Labham sadurlamabidam bahusambhavante manusham artanam anitam apihadira. this process is for humans, basically. Animals are only interested in eating, sleeping, mating, defending. But here we find Bhagavatam said, no, here's an animal. And he had bhakti. And the simple offering of the elephant, Gajendra, pleased the Lord. Bhaktya tutosha. He was pleased by bhakti. A little bhakti from the elephant Gajendra. Bhaktya tutosha bhagavan gajayutapaya. Even though he was, as Prabhupada said, a big fatty animal, and he pleased the Lord. And so then Prahlad says, so what if somebody's a big brahmana, born into a brahmana family, but then they have an attitude problem because they think, I'm so cool, and plus I'm the king of all the varnas and ashrams, and here I come, walking down the street with my thread wrapped around my torso. And one who develops that attitude and forgets that everything's the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that any asset we have, whether it's wealth or beauty or fame or knowledge, it's all just borrowed plumes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He said such a brahmana can't purify himself. He's not pure himself, and he can't purify himself because he has an attitude problem. He can't purify his family. Whereas somebody who's very lowly, who's from a family of people who just are in the low end of the spectrum as far as society goes. This idea of eating whatever you can find walking on the street. And said even from such a lowly background, if bhakti appears, if there's a little hint of bhakti there, then that person is better than that brahmana. And he said such a person realizes that by giving to Krishna, they've discovered the real formula of life, and that is by giving to Krishna in the spirit of Bhoktaram Yagatapasam, that Krishna, everything's meant for Krishna's pleasure. What about me? So don't worry, you're part of Krishna. So if you feed the mouth, then your little finger, you help prepare it, you put it in the mouth, you're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're going to be vibrant. And somebody who discovers that, he said, this is the greatest discovery. And one who knows that then is able to give everything to Krishna as it becomes a foregone conclusion that that's the real purpose of life. And then finally he concludes, Tasmat aham vigata viklaka ishvarasya sarvatmanamahi nami yata granisham nicho jaya guna visarga manu pravishta puyeta yena hi puman anuvarnitena. That therefore, he said, because of all these considerations, I'm going to sincerely attempt to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because He'll accept it if I'm sincere and I try, even though I'm from a demoniac family. So, Bali Maharaj, as we're just setting the context for the verse, in this situation where Vaman comes to readjust the universe. This is called destiny. And if destiny calls to us, then we can see, oh, Krishna must want something different. He must want me to go in a different direction. He, like Parikshit Maharaj, when he heard that some snake bird conjured by a little boy was going to bite him and kill him, he thought, oh, this must be Krishna knocking at my door. And he must want me to surrender more deeply. And I thank you, Krishna, for knocking at my door. This is the perfect attitude for one who's preparing to go back to Godhead. Or one who has that attitude is prepared to go back to Godhead. So Bali Maharaj, the greatness of Bali Maharaj is enshrined in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Swayambhur Narada Shambhu Komara Kapilo Manu Pralado Janako Bhishma Balir Vaiśeṣika Vayam. These are the Mahajans. How does one become a Mahajan? I mean, there's your list. How do you get in the Bhagavatam? Well, apparently by surrendering to Krishna. And if we try to take the lesson from what each one of these Mahajans has done, we can emulate that in our life and attain perfection. That's why they're Mahajans. They're great souls. And then say, just try to find their spirit and follow in their footsteps. So this is very practical, this pastime, because we all have something in this world. And it's meant for Krishna. So whatever way that we can offer to Krishna whatever we have, then we just read this morning, Krishna says, Yat koroshe rashnashi yat juhosi dadasya yat tapasyasi konteya tat kurishva manarpanam shubha shubha palereva mokshashe karma bandhanai sanyasya yoga yuktatma mukto yam upaishasi. He says, if you get into this habit of offering whatever you have to give away, whatever you have to eat, if you do that, then shubha shubha palayarivam mokshashe karma bandhanai. There's a way in which the person renounces the inauspicious and the auspicious. She's not affected by any of these because he's offering it all to Krishna categorically. And such a person is liberated, even though living here in the material world. So, this pastime we can really relate to, because we all have a little kingdom somewhere. Whatever that kingdom may be, some may have, it's just by scale, it's relative. In fact, Rukmini says, when it comes to Krishna, Krishna says, I don't know why you married me, because there are so many other people that had more than me. Shishupal, so wealthy, famous, you could have married him. And she said, oh my God, what are you saying? And she fainted, actually, because it shocked her so much. And she, after she came back to her senses, she said, answering Krishna's statement that he's niskinchana, means I don't have anything. And she said that's illogical, because to not have anything means that you have something, but you don't have something because you are everything. Like you have everything. So how can you say that you don't have something? So Krishna has that quality, and Bali Maharaj exemplifies the way in which we can preemptively give to Krishna whatever we have. And here's his attitude, and it comes out in this verse. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha. Yavanto Vishaya Preshtas Trilokyam Ajitendriyam Na Shaknuvanti te sarve Pratipurya yitum nrapa. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Yavanto Vishaya Preshtas Trilokyam Ajitendriyam Na Shaknuvanti te sarve Pratipurya yitum nrapa. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Yavanto Vishaya Preshtas Trilokyam Ajitendriyam Na Shaknuvanti te sarve Pratipurya yitum nrapa. Bolo bolo. Go. And now we'll do the word for word. We'll go backwards. Nripa, O King, pratipuryayitum, to satisfy. Sarve, taken together. Te, all those. Na shaknuvanti, are unable. Ajita indriyam, a person who is not self-controlled. Trilokyam, within these three worlds. Preshta, pleasing to anyone. Vishaya, the objects of sense enjoyment. Yavanta, as far as possible. Shri Bhagavanuvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said. Okay, leave it right there. And Gita Priya, tell us what you think the verse is saying, based on what's up there. Give us a rough estimate. Give her a microphone. And bring out all the microphones. Don't hide any of them. Consult. You can call a friend. Have a conference.
This verse is definitely talking about a person who is not self-controlled, and
Go ahead, just be bold and say whatever you think. Don't worry about whether you've come out right or wrong. We can fix it later. Go.
and they're unable to satisfy themselves. But then persons who are as far away as possible from the objects of sense enjoyment are pleasing to anyone.
Okay. Anybody else have thoughts? Govinda had his hand up. Get him a microphone in 3 seconds or less. Oh, okay.
I think this is where Vamandev says that
Very good.
even he's giving that principle that a person who is uncontrolled in desires and dissatisfied cannot be satisfied even if that person gets everything in the three worlds. So that's why he's making the point, I just want the 3 steps. So one should be, self-satisfied in general in whatever little is available.
Thank you, Govinda. Who would like to say more about this, just from the analysis of the words, the word for words? Go ahead. Yeah, give him a mic. Any particulars? Oh, keep it up, please.
I was thinking about the thing which you said before, and I was relating it to Queen Kunti's prayers. So in this case, you were saying previously that so Bali Maharaj gave up everything because he understood that it was not his in his first place. And Queen Kunti also says that, O Lord, Namo Kinchana Vitthaya Nivrita Gunavrittaye Atma Ramaya Shantaya Kevalya Pataye Nama. That you are the property of materially impoverished. So it's a very interesting thing that when you think that you don't own anything, then actually you own the Lord. So I was thinking in that direction. So in this case also, when you, in this case, Bali Maharaj actually, of course, Vamandev is telling Bali Maharaj that, if you are not self-controlled, then even though you get everything, you're not satisfied. So, from Bhagavad Gita also we understand that when we understand that Lord is the maintainer and Lord is the Lord, it all belongs to the Lord, then the real satisfaction comes. So, yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. Do you all have enough air? Do you need a little more air? More air, please. Maybe we can get cross-ventilation, and also, if it's not too cool, we can move the air too. Lots of things you can do with the air. Okay, I think we're on to something very important here. Let's look at the translation. We'll read it together. The personality of Godhead said, "O my dear king, even the entirety of whatever there may be within the three worlds to satisfy one's senses cannot satisfy a person whose senses are uncontrolled." That's a axiomatic rule to live by, isn't it? And let's read the purport. I'll read it. If you like, you can listen. The material world is an illusory energy to deviate the living entities from the path of self-realization. Anyone who is in this material world is extremely anxious to get more and more things for sense gratification. Actually, however, the purpose of life is not sense gratification, but therefore, those who are too addicted to sense gratification are advised to practice the mystic yoga system or Ashtanga yoga system consisting of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, and so on. In this way, one can control the senses. The purpose of controlling the senses is to stop one's implication in the cycle of birth and death, as stated by Rishabhadeva, Nunam pramata kurute vikarma yadindriya pritaya apranoti nasadu manye yata atmano yammasanapi klesha dāsa deha. When a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body, which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken on a material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification, by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. That's from 5.5.4, Rishabhadeva. We'll memorize that chapter sometime soon. Right? Yes. Say yes. Yes. Thus, according to Rishabhadeva, the human beings in this material world are just like madmen, engaged in activities which they should not perform, but which they do perform only for sense gratification. Such activities are not good, because in this way one creates another body for his next life as punishment for his nefarious activities. And as soon as he gets another material body, he is put into repeated suffering in material existence. Please look up nefarious. Therefore, the Vedic culture or Brahminical culture teaches one how to be satisfied with possessing the minimum necessities of life. A key sentence, don't you think? To teach this highest culture, Varnashrama Dharma is recommended. The aim of the Varnashrama divisions, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, is to train one to control the senses and be content with the bare necessities. Here, Lord Vamadev, as an ideal brahmachari, refuses Bali Maharaj's offer to give him anything he might want. He says that without contentment, one could not be happy, even if he possessed the property of the entire world or the entire universe. In human society, therefore, the Brahminical culture, Kshatriya culture, and Vaishya culture must be maintained, and people must be taught how to be satisfied with only what they need. In modern civilization, there is no such education. Everyone tries to possess more and more, and everyone is dissatisfied and unhappy. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore establishing various farms, especially in America, to show how to be happy and content with minimum necessities of life and save time for self-realization, which one can very easily achieve by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and to all the exalted assembled devotees of the Lord. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripasinabhe evacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. And now let's see if you can generate any questions. Extra points for questions that drive the conversation to the next level. It's practice. Yes. Oh, Prabhu asked good questions. I'm a little nervous now.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I don't have a question, Prabhu. I just have some reflection from the prayers of Queen Kunti. So I was thinking about the satisfaction of Queen Kunti. So when Krishna was about to leave, she says that Kevayam nama rupabhyam yadavi saha pandava bhavato darshanam yarhi rishikanam imeshituhu. So she is saying that without you, whatever we have, the name, fame, whatever objects of so-called enjoyment we have, has no value. So I was thinking towards the end, she says that Tvayim ananya vishya matir madhupate sakrit. So our ultimate satisfaction is keeping our consciousness constantly in a devotion relationship with Krishna. So I'm just trying to relate. When sense objects doesn't give pleasure, how Kunti Maharani is expressing that in her prayers.
Yes. A nice citation. And Kunti points out that the senses, when they leave the body no longer has any function. And when Krishna leaves the devotees, as she's describing here, he's going away, then they feel like dead bodies also. Nayam subhishite tatra yate danim gadadhara parar ankita bhati swalakshana vilakshitai. She says, because you're putting your lotus feet here, therefore it's opulent and everything's flourishing. Ime jana parasridha supakwau shariviruda vanadri nadyudanvanto yedante tavivikshitai. Vikshitai means if he gives his glance, and Prabhupada quotes in that relationship, Maya Jakshena Prakriti, that he's looking, he glances at the material world and therefore it's moving. Otherwise nothing moves. But she's describing poetically how because of his glance, everything in their purview is flourishing. Ime jana parasridha supakwau sharivirada varadri nandidhanpanto hyedanti tavivikshitai. Then Ata vishvesha vishvatmam vishvamurti sukeshume sneha pashamimam chindi dridam pandishu vishnushu. So she's saying that let me not be attached to the mundane conception of life, like these are my kinsmen. Of course, they're all devotees, but there's another side to the attachment that, oh no, they're my family, these are my kith and kin. Be attached that they're the highest of association, but not in the bodily sense. Let me be freed from that. Please cut my attachment, O Lord of the universe. And then, Tvaime ananya vishaya matir madhupate sakrit ratim udvahata dada gange vaugamadanviti. Implication is once there's this understanding that we're getting from this verse that if I give myself to Krishna, I don't lose myself. If I give whatever myself is in this world is whatever I've attached myself to. That's the idea of myself. That this is my land. This is my property. And this is my family. The whole premise of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada said, is hinted at. I don't like that phrasing. The premise of the Bhagavad Gita appears in the first verse. Dharma kshetri kurukshetre samaveta yutsa mamaka apandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. And that is, mamaka, Dhritarashtra's my kids. And he was so attached to them that when Krishna sent Akrura to try to avoid the battle, people say, oh, why is there violence in Hare Krishna? Your book's about a war. They did everything. Krishna did everything to avoid it. And then, actually, he helped to instigate it as well, because when Duryodhana came to visit the Pandavas in the Sudharma assembly hall, which had been created by Mayadanava. Interesting architecture. There were illusory aspects to it where dry land or just whatever they had as a solid looked like water, and the water looked like solid, and he accidentally stepped in the wet part. And some of the queens there, they were all gathered and watching him come into the assembly. Of course, he cursed out the doorman. He was in a pretty bad mood, I guess. And he had some foul words for the doorman guarding the door, and he came in as if he was the king of the world. She thought he would or should be or deserved to be, and then he stepped in the water mistakenly, and the queens started to giggle, and Yudhishthira, being such a good-hearted person, he tried to stop them, like, cool it. But Krishna then gave his consent with his eyebrows, like, go ahead. And then Dhritarashtra stormed out, and many people thought, uh-oh, this is going to lead to something. But previous to that, there was a way in which Krishna had tried to stop the violence. He had sent Akrura to meet with Dhritarashtra. That was Duryodhana who became so disturbed. But Dhritarashtra, his father, was the one who could have stopped everything. He could have reined in his son, Duryodhana, but he didn't because he was so attached. And Krishna sent Akrura to find out, what's his mood? Is he reformable? Can he control his senses and not be so attached to his bad son, Duryodhana? And when Akrura went to visit him, although that was his main mission, it appears that Akrura had a few extra words to say. He gave his own thoughts to Dhritarashtra, saying, your attachment to your son is going to cause a bloody battle. It can be avoided. And he preached to him about how life is temporary. These aren't really your sons. And Dhritarashtra's reply was, you're a very exalted personality. And you're speaking glorious words, which are full of truth. But I'm not going to do it. And this is the nexus point between the soul and the material world, when there's this vrat that no matter what, I'm going to stay in the material world. Prahlad Maharaj mentions a griho vrat. I'm going to keep all my stuff and I'm trying to get more, and that's going to be my goal in life. But because you couldn't do that, then it led to this war where there was no hope that he would win, but that's the hope against hope that a living being has in the material world, that somehow or other it'll come out okay. And it always strikes me that Dhritarashtra is there, he's blind, but he's hearing from Sanjaya, and somehow or other he's thinking, let my sons be victorious. But because Krishna's on the other side, there's no hope for that to happen. So those who are able to come to this state of heart, of understanding that Krishna is everything, and my real wealth in life is to be a servant, solves all problems. Ishavasamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita magrata kasasudaram. Yes. 1, 2.
Thank you, Maharaj, for such a beautiful class today. And the topic, while we are reading the purport, the first line says that the material world throws opportunities at you to take you away from Krishna. So, we are all working here, and the purport also says that we should be satisfied with whatever little that we have. But at the same time, we also have temple. We also want to kind of expand the temple, all these things. So when opportunities from outside come, in a way that there are bigger opportunities, so like, what is the criteria that we should see, whether it is Maya calling or actually there is a real opportunity where we can do something and then give it to the temple. So what are the indications, or how do we analyze when the opportunities are posed to us through this material world, whether it is Maya that is showing a path taking away from Krishna, or okay, this is the right opportunity, maybe Krishna is inspiring, and then go forward and you can do more service through that.
It's a most helpful. Somebody chanting the japa? It's coming through. It's best to be very clearly aligned with one's purpose and with the purpose of the mission. For instance, we say, when we want more facility for anything, we best lead with, why do we want more facility? For instance, in management, there's always opportunity to make more positions available. But if you make more positions available, you have this title, you have that title, but there's no clear purpose of why they're there. It's just management for management's sake. You get what's called bureaucracy. And there's a bunch of managers sitting around looking for somebody to manage. And that comes into, power, politics, and ideas that, I don't have anybody to control right now. Who can I control through my appointed position right now? And however, in management, as Prabhupada instructed us, should be mission-led. In other words, we do the mission and then we manage the results. And our mission is to preach, pure and simple. Our mission is to teach Krishna consciousness to other people. Jive doi Krishnanam sarvadharma sar. For those who don't know, that's our mission statement at ISV, written for us, custom written for us by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who said, your mission, dear residents of ISKCON, of Silicon Valley, is to show compassion to fallen souls by widely spreading the holy name. Now, if you take that and that becomes the tip of the spear, then there's lots to manage. For instance, you may have a brainstorming session and people come up with 137 ideas about how to expand preaching. Let's just say, and that's a thing. If we sat here together for an hour, we would come up on a whiteboard with 100, depending how fast somebody could write, 137 minimum ideas of how to preach Krishna consciousness more effectively. In the course of that, then someone would say, oh, I know how to do that. I know how to make AI things that would reach out, little robots that would go house to house and knock on people's door with a bag of Bhagavatams. I could do that. It's like, okay, then you're in charge of the AI department. That's management or mission-led management. If you sit around and try to draw up a flow chart, like here's how the whole thing's going to work, well, fine, but there's nothing to manage. It's just a bunch of circles on the page. So in any of our acquisitions in life, let's say you're a grihasta and you want to acquire something, you say, what am I going to do with it? Why am I acquiring it? If you say, I want to live somewhere, then you say, well, why do you want to live there? What's in it for your service? And if you say, my service will be enhanced for these following reasons, that's why I want to get it. Of course, you could do it retroactively too, because you might not have been thinking like that when you went ahead, and then you'd say, okay, now what can we do with it? Either way, it's okay, but the life of it is, how will I execute the mission with this? Then it makes sense. And then it's non-reactive also. It becomes a heavy burden on our heads when we acquire things for any other reason. And this is why the material nature is so sensitive. If you've ever noticed, you can count up the lessons you've learned in your life when you've been burned by the material energy. And there's still a little scar there or a big one. And you can see that, okay, I did it for my own purpose. I spoke out because I wanted the glory. Or whatever it may be, I acted out of a sense of anger because my ego was offended. And that leads to some merciful reaction so that, like, ouch, I shouldn't have done that. That put me in a hole. Whereas the times when we were thinking in terms of all for one, one for all, we're doing this together for Krishna, no ego in it. For me, I just want to help. The pot guy at the Ganges who's passing the, maybe not even that guy, because he might think, I'm the guy on the, maybe 3 guys down and 100 from the Gudicha temple. I'm the guy in the middle, nobody even knows who I am, but I'm going to do this for Krishna. Then counterintuitively, not only do we feel satisfied, but then Krishna notices us, and it's actually a fact from the Chaitanya Bhagavat that the woman who was considered like, she's not part of the real Sangha. And that happens. We saw it with Prabhupada. Prabhupada would come in and everyone's like, no, we're with Prabhupada. And you guys, you can sit on the corner. It wasn't, overt like that. Well, maybe it was. But then Prabhupada will notice, like, oh, who's the guy with the blue jeans on and oil all over him, you must have been working hard. And similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu noticed who everybody else thought was, oh, she's just a housemaid. She doesn't, I'm not saying Srivas or anybody thought like that, but that's the implication of the context, that her name was even Dookie, because like, oh, you got to do all that. And Mahaprabhu noticed her. She's lining up the pots really nicely, but she's way in the back. And he saw past all the luminaries, all the avatars and incarnations who were standing right in front of him and said, her, that's the one back there. I noticed her. So if we come into that awareness that our real alignment in life is to be happily engaged in selfless service, in whatever capacity I can best help out. And if we can develop that ego, that I'm a servant, not a false ego, that I'm the controller, then we can become quite satisfied. And then as far as acquisitions go, we always ask, what is the definition? For instance, I want a big temple. Define big. What does it mean? Because I've seen big temples and I didn't feel comfortable in them. I felt like a stranger, or like, do I belong here? It's big physically, huge infrastructure, and then like, is anybody going to talk to me? Is there any loving exchanges going on and so forth? That can happen. That's possible. So thinking about what's important first, and then expanding based on that, what's mission-based. Like, what do you want it to do to preach? If you say, I want a space, like, what kind of space are you going to do? I want it to accommodate new people so they can come in and feel that they can take to Krishna consciousness. Then you're aligned, and then you won't make a mistake ever, because even if you do, you bought it at the wrong time, whatever, Krishna will fix it for you. Like everyone would say, you bought it at the top of the market, and Krishna, nuh-uh, watch this. Because that's, Krishna's controlling everything anyway. It's one of the lessons that we learn from the Bhagavad Gita. That Duryodhana had it all together. He did all the networking, and he had more money for political ads, so he could put them all up and attract everybody. It's like, yeah, I'll pay you. Come on in. You fight on our side against the Pandavas. And that puny little army, they got nobody, but they had Krishna. I mean, it's one of the main contrasts. If you have Krishna, then you're going to win. And even when you lose, you win. So that's the parameter. And if we manage in that way and we keep asking ourselves, what are we doing? What's important? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur got a big temple. And it was big in the sense that it was big news because it was all marble. And later, when he noticed that because of it, the mood had changed. There was a sweet mood at Ultadanga Junction Road, he said. Everybody just wanted to preach. They were packed in like those little, well, anyway, in a can of peas. But they were happy because they were going out and preaching. I've been in such situations before. I remember in St. Louis, Missouri, we were living in a building which was fit to be condemned. And it was. Soon after, we used it to its full capacity, so much so that there were so many devotees packed in there. And every floor, there was 3 floors in that place, and you walk in any room at night, if you're a little late trying to take rest, you try to find a place on the floor or on a cabinet somewhere to fit in, and everyone just woke up. And I just remember Mangalartik, everyone was dancing so hard that the floor was going like this because everyone was just so happy because they were perfectly aligned. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur noticed a change in mood, and he proclaimed, I'd rather sell the marble off the temple because people are losing, my disciples are losing that sense that what's important is giving mercy. And that's what we're here for. So he said, I'll sell. And some people say, that's why he decided, well, I can leave now because I'm not feeling satisfied. So our success here at ISV is undoubtedly our relationships. And in relationships, there's strength and there's also conflict. And when we learn how to overcome any interpersonal conflict, in any which way, there are multiple combinations and permutations of ways in which we'll feel anxiety and we'll feel frustrated in our association together. Inevitable. Verse from Kunti. Due to social intercourse, she says. What? Give the Manyetum kalamishana manadi niranam vimum samam charantam sarvatra bhutanam yanbita kali. Yeah, she said that the interactions of human beings are really interesting. And our strength, our main asset is that we have the wherewithal to follow Krishna's guidance that he gives in the Bhagavad Gita to work out interpersonal conflicts in such a way that are pleasing to him. That's our main asset. That's big. If you have that, then you can add more layers. And it's worth spreading out because you have something really to offer. If we have a spark of enthusiasm in our hearts that Krishna's will must be done, and I feel enthusiastic because I feel aligned, that I'm doing the best I can to follow the Guru Parampara, sincerely doing my level best and supporting others who are doing it, that's big. And that's worth expanding for, especially when we say, hey, there's so many people, we can't fit them anymore, what are we going to do? Let's get some more space and fill it up. Those guiding principles have to stay in place, otherwise it's so easy to veer off and get into bureaucracy or get distracted by what seems to be big, which is oftentimes brick and mortar. I've got the brick and mortar, therefore we're successful. What's the spirit inside? That's what's most important. Let's see. We had a lineup. Kotik's next. Then we have Vaikuntha Nayak coming all the way from Mysore. I mean, Aniruddha, and then we're coming back to Krishna Saka. And we have the definition of nefarious, which we'll take really quick as a intermission. Go for it.
Nefarious means typically an action or activity, wicked or criminal. And it comes from Latin, ne, which is not, and fas, which is divine law. And it's 16th century. And then it goes to nefas, which is wrong. And then nefarious.
So to not follow divine law is the basic
Yes.
idea of
It's not divine law.
Fantastic. Everyone okay? Okay. All right.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
I'll give shorter answers
Yeah.
from now.
In the purport, it mentions that Vedic culture is meant for teaching us how to live with bare necessities or minimum necessities of life. So Vedic culture also includes Kshatriyas, and we see that they live an opulent life for kings. We see so many stories in Srimad Bhagavatam. In this case of Bali Maharaj, he is ruling the three worlds. So how do we understand that Vedic culture teaches us to live with minimum necessities?
What we need is relative to our service. And that's the main principle. And that's why Ambarish Maharaj is put forth so prominently in the Bhagavatam. Ambarish Maharaj was king. He had enough money to buy anything, and he had everything, but he used everything deliberately in Krishna's service. When Jarasandha had kidnapped by his strength, he was so powerful, Jarasandha, for some time, until Krishna vanquished him. Actually, Bhima did, through the instruction of Uddhava, and Krishna had vanquished Jarasandha. Interesting, he was born from two mothers in two halves. And then they're like, what are we going to do with it? And they threw him in the forest, and this sorceress, Jara, came and said, two halves, maybe they'll fit. Zing! And he got a little son who turned into a kind of a fanatical fellow. Anyway, Jarasandha had got all this power, and he started conquering in every direction like nefarious kings like to do. And he kidnapped 20,400 kings. And he just mistreated them. He put them into a prison, and he was holding them. Twice they offered prayers to Krishna. Once they sent a note to him when he was in Dwarka through a messenger saying, we're your surrendered souls, and we're in prison, and we really need your help. And Krishna, when he hears the prayers of his devotees who are in trouble, he comes to rescue them. So he made an arrangement. It was a grand arrangement because he wanted to get rid of the demons, we already know that, and he also wanted to hold the Rajasuya sacrifice, which was to establish who's the top emperor in the world. And Yudhishthira wanted it to be himself. Why? Because he wanted to show that Krishna is so merciful, and that also he takes care of his devotees, and he knew Krishna wanted a devotee to be the emperor of the world to establish devotional principles. So then Krishna asked Uddhava, you come up with a plan. How will we execute the Rajasuya sacrifice? And part of it was they had to subjugate all the other kings, which wasn't hard because most of them just already accepted Yudhishthira. The only one in the way was Jarasandha, who had fought with Krishna 17 times and was totally annihilated, each one except for the 18th time when Kalyavana came, and Jarasandha came at the same time, and then Krishna, wanting to show his human side, he walked away from the fight. When Arjuna, Bhima, and Krishna went to Jarasandha disguised as brahmanas, which must have been a good makeup artist somewhere. Jarasandha followed the varnashram very strictly. But as it's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, if I can remember the verses, Mukhabahuru padebhya purushasya ashramasrahai chatvaro jagnire varna gunar viprantayo pratak. Then the next verse after that says that if you follow the varnashrama dharma, but you don't accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what's the use of varnashrama? It's a useless waste of time. That was Jarasandha. So I'm getting to a point. I said I'd give a shorter answer. Now I'm going to try to go faster. So what happened was they went there, they begged from Jarasandha, did Arjuna, Krishna, and Bhima. And he said, what do you want? He said, we want to fight with you. And actually, we're not Brahmins, we're Kshatriyas. And he said, yeah, I could kind of tell. And besides, he said, because you're coming and begging from me, you're already defeated. You guys are losers. And I won't fight with Arjuna because he's too weak. And I won't fight with Krishna because he ran away from me, because he's a coward. But Bhima, he's pretty strong. Everybody knows. So we can have a good fight. So let's do it. And they started fighting. And they went for 30 days. No one was going to win. They were equally matched. And then Krishna gave the indication, just by breaking a twig, that, yeah, he was born in two halves. It was intuitive. And Bhima got that. He ripped Jarasandha in half, where the phrase comes. Anyway. So then, after that, he appointed, what was his name? Sahadev, the son of Jarasandha, as the king. They weren't interested in this stuff. They just wanted to have peace in the world and have dharma. So Sahadev was the son of Jarasandha. So they said, you're in charge. And then all the kings came out because they were in prison and they brought him out. Now here's my point. Krishna just didn't release them to the world, said, just find your own way back, catch an Uber, get back to your kingdom. He made all arrangements for them, including making sure that they were totally refreshed physically, mentally, and he ornamented them. He gave them all their kingly paraphernalia back. He didn't want them going out in public demoralized. And kings, you have to have a king. I was thinking about it this yesterday morning, about how every hive has a queen. Do you know that? You know why bees work so hard? Do you know why? You take the queen away and they're like, hey, what happened? They'll die for the queen. That's how they come everything comes back to the queen. That's not just bees, that's everybody. I was thinking in relationship to politics, because we want to elect somebody. It's so funny. It's like, we're going to elect you, and you be the main person. You just sit up there and you tell everybody what to do. Everybody wants somebody in charge because it's our nature. There's a hierarchical sense that we have, like God's up there, we're just going to work in line with something. So we want everybody to be in charge. That's the duty of a Kshatriya. So Krishna maintained that. He gave them all their paraphernalia back, and he said, he wanted them to come out strong. We came out of Jarasandha's prison. Oh, they look good. They have gold on. They're riding good horses. They look powerful, because that's their duty. So if you're a Kshatriya and you walk around with a gamsha on, that's not. So in the Varnashram, Brahmanas, they set an example of living very frugally. And then Kshatriyas, they're supposed to show power so that all the rapscallions in the world who want to take advantage of other people, they get scared away because they see there's powerful people here. They're going to come and knock some sense into me if I do the wrong thing. And Vaishyas, everybody has their realm. So we're meant to take tena tyaktena bunjita. Krishna set aside for each living entity a particular quota. So he said, bunjita, that's yours to enjoy. And that's enough. It's more than enough. Don't get into this greedy mentality. I need more. I got to take more. And that's today's verse. Is if you get into that mood and you forget that you're whatever you have, you should have it for a purpose. And if you don't have it for the purpose of serving Krishna, this can become a huge burden to you. You can't handle it. That's something that Brahma noted when Hiranyakashipu did this crazy austerity. And then he got some material power so he could make some demands. And Brahma's going like, this is not going to end well. Because don't ask for something, he said, that you can't handle. We, as living beings, we can't handle anything that's not aligned with service. Just try it, or don't try it, but think about it. If you take anything off the shelf and you go like, that's mine, if it's not part of your quota, it's going to just become a burden. And it leaves a mark. Hare Krishna. And then we're going all the way to Mysore. Vaikuntha Nayaka Prabhu, good to see you.
That's Guru Maharaj. Maharaj, for me, the takeaway from Bali Maharaj's pastime is that actually 2 sentences, that being Krishna conscious is my responsibility, and I can't give any excuses for not being Krishna conscious. Bali Maharaj could have given so many justifications, that he's surrounded by asuras, and Indra has wronged him during the Samudra Manthana, and he has a guru, and he could have said that I'm just following my guru. So he could have given so many a reason not to be a devotee. But yet I think he's the ultimate Rocky, maybe, right? That movie,
Yeah.
The Boxer, right?
Yeah.
He fought against all the odds, and he was still Krishna conscious. Maybe if you could, that's really inspiring to me. Maybe if you could just tell a bit more about how this happened, because everywhere we see that Dhruva Maharaj is favored by Narada, Prahlad Maharaj favored by Narada, Prachetas by Lord Shiva, Prithu Maharaj by the Kumaras. But Bali Maharaj didn't seem to have any of this, and yet he was able to make a complete turnaround from a Rajasic king to the Mahajana. So, despite the association not being there, despite his guru not being, despite having a pseudo guru, so
Yeah,
it's both an inspiration and a question.
Thank you for your observations. They're very helpful. And regarding your question, his asset is mentioned later as Bhavagrahi Janardana. He had this impetus in his heart that I want to serve Krishna. It happens in other places in the Bhagavatam too. For instance, with the Avaduta Brahmana. He was a rich landholder, 11th canto. And he was a miser. He was totally materialistic, but once he did some sacrifice to get more stuff, and in the process of it, there was this little tweak of devotion that came into his heart. Oh, God's nice, you know. And after he lost everything in due course of time, that's what stayed. And that's what Krishna says, Neha bhakramanashosti pratyavayona vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate matobayat. If you do a little something sincerely for Krishna, then it'll stay eternally. There's that molecule hanging around. Despite everything else, it'll come out at the right time. And for Bali, Bali Maharaj had that in his heart. Note the demigods later, Prabhupada says that they were all amazed that how did he get so much benediction from the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And the answer comes from our acharyas. Prabhupada notes it in his purport. He says he was Krishna is Bhava Grahi Janardana, which means that he looks inside the heart of every living being and tries to find that one molecule of devotion. And because when he finds that, then he says, I'll amplify it. That's the whole point of Aho Bhakiyam Stanakala Kutam Jigamsaya Payad Apyasadvi, that, well, who's this Putana? She's a witch, tried to kill Krishna, but somehow or other she got liberated. And it's like, oh my God, you better take shelter of Krishna now, because Kamvadaya Lum Sharanam Brajema, who else are you going to go to? Krishna's the only one who ignores everything else and only takes that one little molecule. So that's one of the glorious aspects of the pastime, is that Krishna knew his heart, and where it manifested was Bali was in the middle of this yajna, and the context was he's a big king. He's surrounded by all his demoniac minions, and he's doing his duty as the leader of all of them. And when he saw Vamandev, he said, wow, wow. He was just in his heart, he said, I want to bow down right now, but what's it going to look like to all these people out here? I'm in the middle of a yajna, everyone's watching me, I'm the emperor. If you're in a situation, and there's a way that I want to do it, I just can't right now, I'm socially restrained. And Krishna, Vaman knew that. He saw in his heart that he was already bowing down in his heart. So then he just manifested the pastime by giving him the facility. Like, okay, now you're going to bow down. I'll wrap you up. You put my foot on your head. And that was to fulfill his real desire. So be careful. Because if you manifest that sincere desire in your heart, Krishna will notice it. And then he'll come along and he'll like, Yasyahamana grinnami harishe taddanam shanai. Bhagavatam says, yeah, he took away all my stuff. So I had nothing left, Prabhupada said. Nothing left. All I could do was just surrender to Krishna. So that was his great mercy. Thank you, Vaikuntha Nayaka Prabhu. And we have one more on the big board, on the Jumbotron. He's gone. There he is. Broadcasting from Bangladesh.
High
Tell us.
school,
Go for it.
hello. Very nice discussion. And you mentioned really nicely about the four burners, and according to the burners, how the minimum requirement can be different, what is needed to be considered to be satisfied. I was actually more keen on the ashramas, like how when somebody progresses to different ashramas, like from brahmacharya to grihastha to vanaprastha and then to sannyas, how this minimum requirement to be satisfied can change, and then how to adapt to such changes.
It's all gradual. Everything is recommended, and all these life changes are given in Vedic prescription as to be taken in small steps. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Even Krishna says, I'm sorry, what's the verse? Shvesve adhikarya nishta saguna parikitita. That it's a good quality, a guna, if you do what you can with what you have now. Don't try to pretend that you're more than you are. He said that's a fault. Ubariya, what's the list? The opposite. Anyway, the opposite is true. If you try to, Krishna says, if you try to do more than you're qualified for, then it's not a good quality. And so, as an example, in every one of the Vedic systems, in Varnashram, there's gradual steps. Sannyas is Kudichak, Bahudak, Parivajakacharya, and Paramahamsa. That's 4 steps. I mean, these things, they have to be applied to our lives also. Getting too nitpicky about the Varnashram system, we have to see how it applies to our life, what's the spirit of it, how to gradually advance in Krishna consciousness. In any case, just to say the gradual steps, Bahudak means the person still lives very close to the family. So otherwise, instant separation, it would be traumatic for everybody. And they bring them by a little prasadam. They open a little thing, here you go. All right, it's all right. And they put it in there for him, and then he renounces even that regulation, the comfort of them bringing something, and he goes out, oh, whatever I can find in the field, like Jamuna and Todd used to do. They'd go around to all the farmers, and there was so much left over that they started their own business. Set up stands selling all the leftovers from the field. So then one notices that, oh yeah, there's plenty out there left over. So that's the Kudichak. You go out and collect a few things and just like, yeah, I'm fine. You get a gradual realization that, yeah, what was I thinking? I really didn't need that much. And God's taking care of me wherever I go anyway. And then comes Parvajakacharya, when you walk around the world and tell everyone, like, yeah, you don't need so much stuff. And then Paramahamsa stage is the stage in which you settle in and just deeply introspect and relish the process of Krishna consciousness because you have no other interest. So that's there in Vanaprastha. It's there in all the different categories of Varnashram, that there's a step-by-step gradual process. And the point about how it applies to us, I won't say right now because we're out of time. But it's an interesting conversation, and it's a very important one to have because modern application of these things, too much. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to say it, so I won't. Did I leave any question on the floor? Last one from Vaiśeṣika, and then we're done.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for the very nice answers. I have a question on Yat Karosi Yad Asnasi. The point came, give yourself and everything to Krishna. So I have a question when it comes to work. Even though it is said like give fruits and like even if it helps me to stay here for service and everything, but when I do work, it doesn't feel same as reading Bhagavatam or going out for Sankirtan and everything. So it doesn't feel same Krishna conscious as when we are doing work. And also it comes when I'm doing devotional service, these thoughts about work and everything. So how to really, even after doing this thing, how to feel really Krishna conscious when doing work?
Can I have the Prabhupada Shloka book? Do you have one handy? Oh, sorry, we took yours. There's a verse that relates directly to this, which is spoken by Krishna. I know the verse, but it won't hop into my head right now. That means I don't know the verse. So, yeah, it's 11th canto. Krishna gives this guidance. Tavat karmana kurvita na nirvidyeta yavata matkata shravanadova shraddha yavana jayate. That's 1129, 11.20.9. As long as one is not satiated by fruitive activity and has not awakened his taste for devotional service by Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, one has to act according to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions. How does it apply? Well, in a practical way, recently when Sachindra Krishna drove us somewhere and we said, how's it going? He said, well, looking forward to getting back to work and for school starting. I said, what do you mean? And he said, too much extra time. Because he said, kids are out of school. No, anyway, I'll give you the conclusion. School's a good thing. In fact, sociologically, one of the main purposes of school is to keep kids busy for a long time until they mature. And work, he said, I welcome it because I had to do something. I mean, he trained for years. He's a doctor. How much training do you do for that? And then what are you going to do as a doctor? You got to be really attentive and in there. Work's not bad. It's good. We have to work with our senses. When there comes a time, tavat karma nakurvita nan nirvidyeta yavata matkasha shravanadova shradayavana jayate. He said, when there comes a time when you don't need anything else but hearing and chanting. If you can say that now, let's see. Can you stay engaged 24/7? Maybe. But even then, if you have some work, it's good to, and you have a situation where you have to do it in order to stay in your service, that's purifying. Because when you get more time, you won't take it for granted. What's better? Someone who lives in Vrindavan, and they're thinking in their mind, I should go to Delhi and watch a video. Or somebody who lives in Delhi and they're thinking, I have sit on the back of a motorcycle to get to my factory job, but I wish I was in Vrindavan on Parikram, which is better? And so there's this way in which Krishna gives us this tension point in our life where we have to work and do devotional service. When we get to the point of we're the guy in the desert who's dying of thirst and someone offers us a glass of water, I'll pay $1 million for that. That's what this verse is saying. When you get to that point with your hearing and chanting that I can't live without it, I'll pay $1 million if you'll read me a verse. Or allow me to chant undistracted by anything like that. It gets so intense, then you're there. You can live that life, but otherwise work's good for you. You have to work to maintain yourself. Krishna says in Karma Yoga, you see, even kings like Janak, they set an example. Even though he was a Paramahamsa, he still went out and worked because he wanted to show all the citizens that work's not bad. You got to do it. Just do your work and be hungry for Krishna consciousness. Take full advantage of what you can. And there will come a time when you won't have to anymore. And I've seen it. I remember my good friend Satyadev Prabhu had the worst job in the world, which was to be a paramedic. It was like being in the war zone every day, war zone. Very heavy, heavy work. And he did it for 20 years, and then it just stopped. And, how are you guys doing? Fine. I mean, economically fine, everything fine. And when he was in the midst of it, he had to sleep in a firehouse 3 days in a row. And he didn't know when the alarm was going to go off, and they were going to have to break his sleep, jump on an ambulance, and go to some gory scene where somebody just got shot or somebody overdosed or something like that. But I saw him during those times. We were, and still are, bosom buddies, and we'd hear and chant once a week. He'd come over, you remember. And he got to read one verse a day. And he said it was the most nectarian thing for him to read the one verse in that context where the rest of his life was absolutely consumed with this thing that he couldn't get out of. And then all of a sudden it just broke. And work karma is like that too. You'll just come to the end of it where it doesn't make any sense. And you come to the end of it if you continue hearing and chanting while you're doing your work. Vidyam chayas tadvedo bayam saha avidyayam ratum tirtva vidyayam ratum ashnate. Do it side by side, because then it builds into something where when the work does start to slow, you're like, oh, I got to work. Because some people can't even do it. They'll be in their 80s and they have interests around the world and businesses and everything like that, and they just can't stop doing it. And I met one person, last point. I met a person who was diagnosed with some rapid growing cancer, and he wanted to take shelter. I went there and spent time with him by his bedside. And he said one day, I want to give something to the temple. And he said, he asked his person who was helping him, bring me a checkbook. And he's writing it out. And he said, it's hard even doing this, he said to me. He said, I've been working my whole life being attached to everything I do, my work, my money. He said, just writing this check is very hard. I can't give it up. Even now, he said, I know I'm going to die in a week, but I can't, it's hard for me to even hand this to you to give to the temple. And, he could see everything, that his whole practice in life had been non-existent until the last couple months. He tried to do a Hail Mary and make up for it. And it's hard. So while you're working, develop that, whatever capacity you have, whatever you're given, do that and make it strong. And then when the work karma ends, you won't be like, oh, what am I going to do now? Maybe I'll get another job, even though you don't need one. You'll already be ready. You'll be spring-loaded. That part moves out and you move in. Your hearing and chanting will just naturally take it up. And that makes for an organic way in which we live our lives, and we do what we have to do, and we also become Krishna conscious. Om Tat Sat. Now comes the most important part of our program today, the part we've all been waiting for, which is we have a special talk today under the guidance of Vaiśeṣika Leela. So we're going to reconfigure the room. Everybody stand up and say Gauranga one time. And there's 10 more minutes, so just hold on. Gauranga. Divya, I saw you have a question. I'll talk to you later. Sorry I missed you. We have to end here, but maybe just send me a WhatsApp and then I'll get in touch, okay? Hare Krishna.